Thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. The House budget did get introduced yesterday, as did the Senate budget. And we're just beginning to get a closer look at it, explore it in all its details. And let me first say that I appreciate the comments of my colleague, the gentleman from Colonial Heights, as well as the efforts of the Chairman of the Appropriations Committee over the last few years to make this much more transparent and open process, and to involve members from this side of the aisle in that process. I think it makes for a better process. It gives more transparency and allows the public to see what we're doing. Of course, that doesn't mean we're going to agree on everything, but I think it's really good because then you can have an honest exchange of ideas on the critical priorities in this budget. And to be sure, you know, this is the second part of this session. This is where we deal with the budget and the priorities embedded in it. You're going to hear a lot, I think, from both sides of the aisle, particularly the Republican side of the aisle over the next several days about how prudent this budget is, structural integrity, how we're trying to work within the dollar figures that we're projecting to be the revenues that are coming into the Commonwealth. You'll hear a lot about that, and that's a good thing. But you also have to take a look at this budget in perspective and recognize what is happening as we put this budget together. I want to just talk about a small piece of this today in hopes that you'll just think about it over the next few days. And that piece has to do with an effort that's been made through the House Appropriations Committee to try to provide some assistance to our hospitals, who I think we all agree are taking some very serious losses in the next few years. Unfortunately, the relief that's being offered by the budget bill that's come out of House Appropriations is inadequate. You may have recalled the gentleman from Colonial Heights mentioning how there was additional money to restore the inflation factor to the hospitals for Medicaid funding. That is a good thing. It was not in Governor McDonnell's budget. It should have been in Governor McDonnell's budget. It should be on our budget. No kidding. That is not a problem. And while this is some help for the hospitals, and I think a tacit recognition of what we have been trying to argue here on this side of the aisle, and that is that the hospitals were not put in this situation of their own making, but because they are put in that situation, we have a responsibility to act. While this is an admission of that, I think, the problem is twofold. One, it is not enough money. And two, it is not the best way for our Virginia taxpayers to help those hospitals. First, why is it not enough money? Well, you heard the gentleman from Colonial Heights talk about $118 million to those hospitals over the next 2 years. The hospitals, however, have been telling us that their funding gap is much greater. $314 million in 2014. $526 million in 2016, $629 million in 2018. Secondly, it's not the most prudent and efficient way to help Virginia taxpayers, because what we are doing, ladies and gentlemen, is we are taking general fund money from other parts of the budget and we are sending it to the hospitals. This is Virginia taxpayer monies. We didn't have to do it that way. We could have grabbed the federal dollars that we have already sent to Washington and bring them back here. Those would not have been general fund monies. Those would have been our taxpayer monies, and that we could have brought them back here to close the coverage gap and to help the hospitals in the process. The other thing to realize about this, and I know we'll talk a lot about Obamacare, and we're going to give out an award for who says Obamacare the most between now and the budget decision that gets made on Thursday. Recognize that what we are doing when we move that general fund money from one place in the budget to those hospitals is we are affecting other core services of government. So when we talk about funding our core services of government, and we're taking that general fund money out, whether it's for economic development initiatives, job creation, workforce development, school funding, kids in foster care, we are moving that general fund money to the hospitals. And so we are affecting the rest of our general fund budget. You will look at the budget and you will see those cuts. And while the Appropriations Committee might not have explicitly put together a budget, an entire budget, based on the premises that we should not take these federal monies, the fact is that we are now doing so. And we're leaving thousands of people in the lurch and the hospitals not covered. So it is now intruding into other parts of the budget, this antipathy to getting those federal dollars. And as we go forward over the next several days and in the next few weeks, I hope that we'll take a close look at that dynamic and recognize that there is something we can do about it. We can access those federal monies. We can bring them back to Virginia. We can use them to help our taxpayers. We can use them to help our hospitals. And we can insure some 275,000 Virginians who don't have insurance at present. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.